Welcome back everyone to Dock Tank Summer. It is time for episode 2. For this episode, we'll be talking about the one and only Puffa. Puffa is the main locomotive character for tugs. He is the only engine other than Spotted 2 that will have any sort of speaking role across the show's 13 episodes. Like the first episode of this series, we will cover Puffa's backstory in detail, and then go over his character traits and what he is like personality-wise. But FirePorter, you may be asking, don't you already have a bundle of Puffa made? What happened to that? Well, you know Gooper James? Yeah, that's Puffa's chassis. I tore up Puffa as I wasn't really happy with him, and also wanted to change his backstory and bases a lot more afterwards. So, that won't be covered in this video as I have yet to make a new model for Puffa. Now then, now that we got all that out of the way, let's get into Puffa's backstory in the Porterverse. Puffa is an 080T built by the Big City Locomotive Works in 1898. He was one of the first engines in the United States to have this configuration. The up-and-coming Big City Railroad was just starting to phase out its legacy fleet, which consisted of a handful of 1860s and 1870s engines which were bought second and third hand from other railroads. That was how broke the railroad was at this time. But that was going to change with Puffa. Most of the money the railroad had was invested into their own engine works, and Puffa was among the first few engines built for the railroad, in-house. Puffa was designed to be a dockyard switcher, but was also strong enough to carry out small train deliveries if needed, hence the 080T configuration. In the beginning, Puffa originally had a balloon smokestack on the top, a common trait amongst engines at the time. Puffa was painted into a black livery with yellow lining. This will become the official livery for the Dockyard Railroad, a division of the Big City Railroad. Puffa would operate as the Big City Port Switcher engine, shunting trains of boxcars, hoppers, and coaches on the regular. It wouldn't be until 1910 that another engine would be built to assist Puffa in the increasing workload. Little Owl entered the switcher scene later that year. It became the Dockyard Railroad's number 2, same livery and all. The two engines would shunt at the port in tandem until number 3 arrived. Number 3 was none other than Porter. He would join their ranks in 1925 after being built. The trio would shunt trains together, while Puffa taking the occasional freight train from time to time, until Porter's departure in 1942. In Porter's absence, an S-100 tank engine, which was originally meant for war service, effectively became the number 4 of the railroad. This S-100 wasn't sentient for those wondering, but still wore the same livery. Shortly after Porter's departure, Puffa will have his diamond smokestack removed by around 1943, as various modifications to its design over the years made having it simply impractical. Time would go on, and more engines would arrive at the Dockyard Railroad. By 1955, diesel engines started appearing on the Big City Railroad, and the Dockyard Railroad was no exception to this. 2 diesel switchers of custom design were brought on as engines 7 and 8 of the Dockyard Railroad. Puffa didn't mind working with diesels in the slightest, but was well aware of what their presence meant. He knew that at some point in the future, he would be retired from service, as he was well past his prime at the age of 63 by 1961. Following the infamous high tide incident with Little Owl in 1966, steam was effectively killed off on the Dockyard Railroad. Puffa was withdrawn later that year. His future was already bright, however, as he was donated to the Big City Transportation Museum. The museum was just starting up at this time, and was actively searching for pieces for display and demonstration. Puffa was one of the first engines at the museum, and he was restored back into his 1940s condition with the original Dockyard Railroad livery. The museum had a little roundhouse display with a turntable similar to the Age of Steam roundhouse. Puffa would most often be the centerpiece until being joined by other Big City Railroad engines as time went on. Puffa would become solely a static display by 1976, but he does prefer it over being scrapped. He is happy to be preserved with as many Big City Railroad engines as there were, and is eternally grateful for being preserved in the first place, as many of his friends were sadly scrapped. He doesn't mind being static too much, and is overall happy with his life. When it comes to character, Puffa is considered a more of a witty sort of character, one that acts quickly in intense situations, and is also a little bit more of a stickler for the rules. Not too different from Cyclops from X-Men 97. He does very clearly recognize when the rules are abused and unfair, and rightfully calls them out and criticizes them. Puffa absolutely cannot stand injustice, especially amongst engines. He is no stranger to standing up for even the diesels that replace him in the end. Puffa values equality and fairness above all else. Naturally, Puffa is best friends with Little Owl, and the two of them are indeed preserved together and talk to each other a lot. Most of the time, Puffa often answers questions that visitors have about the Big City Railroad's history and the whereabouts of certain engines. Overall, Puffa is a fairly complex character, one who is a bit of a stickler for the rules, but one who is also a major fighting force for equality and fairness. He is eternally grateful for being preserved, and you wouldn't have it any other way. Well, that was Puffa's lore in the Porterverse. Pretty interesting, I'd say. The next episode, chronological, will be the Crazy Bartholomew episode, and also a collab coming up as well. There's no exact release date guaranteed for the collab as of now, but it will be hopefully soon and be a part of this Doc Tank Summer series. What is the collab, you may ask? Well, I'd rather save that detail for another date. Thank you all very much for watching this episode of Doc Tank Summer, and I shall see you all same time next week.